So today we're going to be running through P6-Auditor. And this is a tool that we have built several years ago. The tool is very specific in what it does, and it's really designed to help you manage a large team using P6. And I'll jump into the specifics. So I'm Nicole Jarden. I'm joining you actually from Montreal today, and I'm the CEO of Emerald. With me is Sue Hopkins. She's joining us from Wyoming, and Sue will be running through the specific demo of the software. So let me touch on why we built P6-Auditor. What are some of the common struggles that our clients find when they've got a large P6 user base? Maybe you've got multiple plants or different parts of your company, different offices, maybe lots of different projects on the go, and you've got to administer a database that's got a lot of people in it and maybe doing different functions, and you need to give them some broad security, broad permissions, and you need to understand what's going on in your database. So one of the things that are, especially the corporate clients that we deal with, need to understand is who is actually using P6. So you've got a bank of licenses, and you may have multiple people administering them. So you want to understand who's using P6, right? Do we have too many licenses? Do we have not enough? You want to make sure you're on top of that because you don't want to open yourselves up to any issues with Oracle. The next typical thing is managing global data, making sure that your global data is set up right, it's intact, things are not getting changed by admins that may not talk to one another in different geographical locations. So that can be a pretty common struggle as well. And then we get into the whole oops moments that we all have. Even admins have oops moments where they might overwrite something, delete something by mistake, rearrange something by mistake, and you're trying to understand how this happened, when did it happen, that type of thing. So these are events that we're going to run through, and Sue will show you some examples of those kind of events. So those are some of the things that people who are more of the super users, more of the admin types in P6 can struggle with. So I thought I'd ask a poll question. And how do you deal with deleted data in your database? Okay, so that's the first question. It's a pretty common thing that happens, and people have different ways of dealing with it. So just out of curiosity, do you retype it, redo it manually? Do you go to your IT guys and get a backup and restore it? Do you even roll back databases? Like, are these things that you experience? So if you could go ahead and try and answer it, would be great. And sometimes it's a challenge because you don't necessarily have the ability to even get a backup and restore or roll back the database. Okay, so I'll share those who were able to answer. That's fine. So I think it's pretty common, and I've seen it far too often, that people just say, oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to retype it, which can be quite a bit of work. We've seen even a whole resource dictionary get deleted by mistake. So, things do happen. Those are those whoops moments. And just because you're an admin or a super user doesn't mean those don't happen to you. So just again, kind of curious, the experience of the team here. How much time do you spend each month dealing with these sorts of things, looking for the users or dealing with deletes, hunting down whether people rearranged EPS nodes or things like that. Just kind of curious what the experience of some of the team is. So it's, and it does totally vary. And what is going to depend on your circumstances, your user base, so it's really can vary considerably. So we have a few people who are able to vote, and it's a bit of a variety. But even if we can save you a few hours a month with a tool that helps you get super focused on the problem you're experiencing, I think there's some value there. Okay. So let me run through how P6-Auditor works, just in a general sense, and then Sue will deep dive into the specifics and give you some real-life examples that we've gone through. So let me first talk about how it's deployed. So most of our tools are can be deployed on-premise, quasi-on-premise, or so that means hybrid, like a hosted on-prem and cloud combo. Now, P6-Auditor is one of the tools that we have that cannot be a hybrid. It needs to be fully on-premise, or it needs to be fully hosted, either like in an Emerald Cloud. But the idea here is the auditor must be in the same place as P6 because it is a database level tool. Okay, that's just something to be aware of. And in Auditor, the three areas we're really focused on is we use the auditing tables that exist with P6, and we take those tables and we report out in a user-friendly manner. So you don't need to be a query expert with database knowledge. We've taken that, we've put it into a platform that's easy to work with. And you can see events, things like edits, deletes, adds, those typical kind of events. And Sue will show you some examples of the kind of events we're looking at. You can understand user activity, so which users are logging in, whether they're licensed, and that type of data. Again, she'll run through it. And usage data. So things like, am I using activity codes? Where am I using them? So this overlaps a little bit with our P6 Loader tool as well. So the intent there is similar, but a little bit more, a little different focus on what you're doing with usage reports. So it helps you find out where things are being used, which projects, and things like that. So again, Sue will deep dive to go through that. Now, why did we put those things in? Because those are really the main things that people need to do as administrators. They're trying to understand who's using the software, who are doing certain functions so that they can verify or find where a problem occurred. Give them some coaching if there's something that they just weren't aware of, and then be able to reuse that kind of data. So within the tool, we have what we call reports inside the auditor. You create them, you save them, and you can reuse them. So for example, let's say one of your jobs or your job functions as administrator of the system is to check how many people are logging in each month. That's something that you might do on a regular basis, in which case it'd be nice to have a report that's pre-canned and you can use it quite simply each month. So that's part of the tool that's available inside there. Okay. Now, let me just touch on the events. So events could be global. So they could be things in the dictionaries. Which could include codes, user defines, or they can be events inside specific projects. Okay, so we've got both layers of events. So it's not just global data that we're talking about. When it comes to the usage reports, I touched on some of them, but we also look at calendars because calendars can be a tricky one to audit and monitor as well. And on the user side, we talked about logins, licensing, and I guess there's some active session counts and things like that. So that not only if they log in, but how often, so the frequency type thing. We've got those layers of detail. And again, Sue will jump in and give us a deep dive and go through real scenarios that we've been through with our clients and with our own administering of our Emerald provided cloud. Okay, so I think we'll hand it over to Sue. Let me just make sure all's good. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Sue. and she can walk us through and go through the deep dive.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. So I'm just going to share my screen here so that you can take a look at my little live demonstration here. And first of all, this is the sign-in screen for P6 Auditor. Now, I just have one database that's hooked up to Auditor right now, but you do have the ability to actually point P6 Auditor at multiple databases if you have that need if you have multiple databases that you want to manage here. So essentially, you would just choose the database that you want to monitor, that you want to go into, and you would sign in. So from our main screen here, you can see the three kind of topics that Nicole referred to. We have our event reporting, our usage reports, and our user activity reporting. So I'm just going to run through just a couple of real life scenarios so that you can kind of see how you would hunt down and see what actually happened with your data. And I'm going to start out with the event reporting. So in event reporting, I have a database, of course, that I'm hooked up to. And the first thing that I want to show you is perhaps an EPS being moved. In this case, I have this auditor EPS here. Now, this one should be residing under this P6 auditor EPS as a child. And it was at one point. However, now I see it's been moved under this P6 load webinar one. And I want to try to find out what happened and when this was moved. So what I can do is I can go into my P6 auditor and I can take a look, first of all, in my event reporting. So we're going to look at the EPS audit, but as you can see here, I have many, many different topics that I can visit on these event reporting. And essentially what these do is they correspond with those auditing tables that are turned on by your administrator of Primavera. It sounds like somebody needs to mute. I'm getting some feedback here.
I think it was me. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. So I want to take a look and find out what happened to that EPS node and that movement on it. So on my tables that are displayed here, I have a number of different things that I can, different columns that I can deal with. Some are populated and some, depending on what type of update or whatever has done, some are not. So if there's values to be populated in the column, they will show up. In this case, the ones that we're looking at right here on the screen don't have anything on those. So I want to concentrate on just that EPS that got moved. So I can actually go and filter on each one of these columns depending on what I'm looking for. So I'm going to filter on my EPS ID. When I filter on that, I have options of how I want to apply that filter. And I am going to just do a contains, and then I'm going to put that I want to look at anything that contains my auditor EPS in here. So when I do that, it narrows it down just to that particular EPS ID. Now, I have a number of things that have gone on with this EPS. I can see it. I've had some updates up here, as well as I get down, I can see on this row here, I have an EPS path change. So if I open this up, I can actually see, and let me just kind of distribute this. And this works much like Excel. I can expand, I can contract them, I can move them around as I need to, each one of these columns. So I can see here that I had it at one point, it was in the auditor EPS, which is where I expected to find it. However, it has been moved to that P6 load webinar EPS. I can tell what date it was done and what time, as well as the user that did that. So maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it wasn't. I have the ability to then go back and possibly chat with this user and find out, what actually was the situation. Was there a reason for them to move that? Maybe they didn't realize that when they moved that, maybe other people couldn't see it, and things like that. So some coaching might be involved with that also. So really nice to be able to pinpoint the changes that have been made. And these are true with all of these auditing tables. I just happen to use the EPS being moved as my example here.
I'm glad
Now,
it wasn't me.
it was not, but you were up here. I can see you.
Now, this is an example that personally I have to deal with probably once a month with one of my clients. So it is a common one that we deal with.
Absolutely. And so it is nice to know who that user is and exactly when it happened, because here we are, a little further into the month, and maybe I haven't been in for a while. I can actually see, oh, well, yeah, it was the second that happened. Another scenario I have is that I have a deleted project. So I've gone out in my database and I've searched for my project, and it's not here, essentially. So it was here previously. I know because I was working in it earlier in the month and at the end of last month. And so I want to find out when it got deleted and who deleted it, so that I can, again, investigate, find out what happened, and maybe do some coaching again, or perhaps I need to restore that project, and so I can find that date that it happened on. So I'm going to go into my project audit in this case, and I'm going to it's going to bring up everything. Now, first of all, what I want to do is I just want to concentrate on the deletions. So I can filter on this operation here. I can click that open. I can just keep my delete as what I want to see, and I can filter out just those deletion events. Now I can see that there were several projects here that were deleted. However, I don't have the name on here, but I do have a field that's way off to the right here. And I'm going to show you what I can do. And these are in alphabetical order, the fields as you go across the column headers. So I can go and I can find my project short name, and I can take a look at what happened. Now, I don't remember who was doing what and what the date was at the front. So what I can do is I can grab this column and I can take it back up to the front where my data is, and I can then compare it. So I can move these columns around in the order that I want them to be, so that it more suits what I'm analyzing here. So I'm just going to put it right here after my deletion here. So now I can take a look. This is my project that was deleted, this P6L-new B-2. And I can see that it now is a blank. It was deleted. It was taken out. So if I scroll over a little bit more, I can see that this P6 Loader 1 user deleted that project, and they deleted it on August 2nd at 4:20 p.m. Now, I may need to have this project restored. So now I have the date and time for my IT department to go back and search for that project so that they can reinstate it from a backup or what have you. And then I can get my project back and I can continue to work on it. There were a few others, of course, that were deleted, but these were probably okay. Nobody, it's not something that I'm using, so I don't need to worry about those. But if someone else on these other projects needed to find out what happened to them, they could find those also. Now, I have put in a request, and I've been told by my IT that it can be done, to actually add this project short name over here in this short name list, so that we can filter by actually the project itself too. So that is something that's going to be added very soon to our auditor reports here, so that it gives us a little bit more flexibility on where we can sort and where we can look and find what we need by filtering. Now, the last event reporting I want to visit is an activity code. So I have a project that, again, I was working on earlier in this month, and I have discovered that I had this P6L work order, which is a global code, that used to be assigned, and it's no longer assigned to my project. And that's kind of curious. That shouldn't be something that just goes away. So first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and check out my activity codes in my global codes and see if it's still there. Well, it is, and that's odd. I scroll through, and this looks like exactly what I need. This is my work order list that I was using, but why is it not assigned still? So I'm going to go out and I'm going to kind of investigate what happened with this activity code. So going back to P6 Auditor, I'm going to go to my activity code type. Now in my activity code type, as I look across on the top here, I see that I do have some P6L work order items that are actually some things have happened to these. So if I move this scope over, I can see that I have my P6L work order that is a global, and that was inserted. So it was added. Why do you suppose that is? I'm not sure. Well, right below it, I have this P6L work order that was deleted. However, I can see that that's a project code and not a global code. So maybe I just want to focus on my global code, since I know that that's what I'm working on. So I can, again, filter this. I can say that I want it to contain global. Apply it, and now I'm just looking at my work order code. Looks like it's been a little busy out there. Looks like it's been added and deleted a couple of times. So apparently there's some issues with it. However, I know I worked on my project, and it was assigned its codes on the 1st of August. So I am concerned with these two dates here. So it looks like this user deleted that work order code, that activity code at the global level, which in turn deleted all those values from my project. Well, that's not very good. However, it looks like they may have remembered that, oh, shoot, this isn't something, or maybe they realized that they should not have deleted it, or it was a mistake, because we're all human and mistakes happen. So they've gotten a hold of this other user, this P6-Loader1, who obviously has been involved with this work order code, and they've enlisted them to reinstate that work order code. So they've recreated it and repopulated it. Well, unfortunately, although you've recreated it, it did not go back, and it didn't populate back into my project where it was assigned. Because as far as my project is concerned, those are all gone. They've been wiped out. So now I have two things that I can do with this information. I can go and I can coach my two users and let them know that, I know that mistakes happen, and perhaps when something like this happens, you should, let people know that this was something that occurred, so that it can be dealt with immediately. In the second case, I have a date again that I can tell my IT department I need to go get these assignments from this project and reinstate them in my project there. So I don't have to go back and re-enter all of those work order codes that were assigned. So very easy to kind of track down what is happening with your data as you go along in these audit tables and as you are working with the information in your P6 database. So the next piece I want to visit are
Let,
our usage reports. Oh, yep.
let's just stop there for a quick sec.
Okay.
So I think it's probably obvious to the folks watching, but if you can see, there's like a word and then there's an arrow and then there's a blank. That's trying to let you know that it went from something to nothing, or vice versa, right? So Sue,
Yes.
maybe
Yes.
you can explain what they're saying just
Sure.
to make it a
Sure.
bit
So
clearer.
on the on the deletion, I can see that I had an activity code type that was there to begin with. Now this arrow is telling me what it was changed, for lack of a better term, to. In this case, it was deleted, so it was a blank. Now, when it was reinserted, it was not there, so it was a blank. And now the arrow tells me that this is now created there. And so I can see that it's been inserted. That means it's brand new. And delete means that it was removed. Now, in the case of my EPS audit here, you can see that it started out with this EPS path, this one EAI tools, the one EAI P6 Auditor EPS, and it was moved to or changed to the tools P6 load and then the EAI P6 load webinar. So I can tell what changes were made, whether it was deleted and went from a value to nothing, whether it was created and it went to no value to a value, or I can see what the change is. And that arrow is denoting from where to where the data, that value occurred.
Perfect. Yeah, and then that makes both what you had first to what you change it to searchable, right? So
Correct.
that's what Sue showed earlier when she did a search. Okay,
Yep.
perfect.
Okay. So the next thing I want to visit are usage reports. Now, these are really nice, especially if you're trying to keep your database clean and managed, essentially. So we have the ability to take a look at activity codes, calendars, resources, roles, and UDFs, and where they are actually being used. So I'm going to do an example for a calendar usage. So I'm going to click into that tab here. And right now I'm seeing everything. Now, maybe I want to clean up my global calendars. Those are listed on the right here. These are all global calendars. But first of all, I want to make sure that they aren't being used if I clean them up in any of my projects. So if I wanted to, I could narrow it down to one or several projects. But in my case, I want to look at my all of my projects. So I'm going to click this up at the top here that tells Auditor, look at every project. And then I can go and look by calendar. So if I click my standard 5-day calendar, I can see that I've got several that are, and I can see here that I'm showing 10 rows per page. Well, I want to see more data there. So I can actually open this up and I can make it larger. So then I can go, and sometimes this is a bug that they're trying to find out how to fix. So the scroll sometimes freezes up. So let me go back and redo this and see if I can get this to scroll. So now I can scroll, there we go. And I can see all of the projects that are using this particular standard 5-day work week. Now, if I had a baseline that was also using it's going to denote whether it's a baseline or whether it's a project where that calendar is being used. So it's actually going to pull information from my baselines also. Okay, so I know I don't want to get rid of that one. because I have projects that are assigned to it. However, let's check my next ones. Well, this one has a couple that are assigned. This one has a couple. Let's check this one. Okay, so I have this number 8 calendar that's not being used by any projects in my database. I might want to look at this and maybe clean up my global calendars and remove this. And I could continue to go through my calendars as I want to and find out exactly where they're being used and if they're being used. So this is going to help me with my cleanup a lot. It's going to help me determine whether or not it would be feasible to get rid of a calendar in this case. But I could also take a look at my activity codes, my resources roles, and my UDFs also. So this will help you to clean up the databases and keep them kind of nice and tidy and kind of uniform so that everyone is seeing what they're expecting to see at that global level.
So for cleaning it up, Sue,
Uh-huh.
this is where P6-Loader has a bit of overlap, right?
Right,
Okay.
right. So we have a tool called P6-Loader, and it also does usage reports just like this. So in those usage reports that you can get out of P6-Loader, it's going to give you essentially the same information on where they're used, but it does tell you how many times they're used, if that's important. It can also determine whether you want to use P6-Loader, like say for instance, in the case of this 001 calendar, it's only being used by a couple of by a couple of projects here. Maybe I'd need to roll this to a project level instead and make it a project calendar, because really there's not that many projects that are using this. And if I made it a project calendar, again, it could clean up my global calendars. And there is a utility in P6-Loader that can push that calendar down to that project level for you. So that's just some of the, kind of an example of what you could do there. We can also do that with activity codes in P6-Loader, push it down to the project level.
Yeah. So this tool helps you see where the problems are, but it's not designed to do the cleanup. P6-Loader takes the next step and lets you do the cleanup type of thing that you're probably looking at doing. So they kind of work together. But this is meant for the admin to be able to see what's going on, and then Loader is where you do all the rework, the cleanup, much quicker than doing it in the app. Okay.
Exactly. All right. So now let's visit the user activity reports. So I have my sessions. Let me see here. Looks like I'm not getting my sessions in, so I'm just going to refresh my data. There we go. And so I have 3 options on user activity reporting. I have active sessions, so I can see who is actually out there and who's using it right now. I can also go in and look at my user license usage. So I have several users out here, and if I, increase what I'm seeing again, I can see that some are actually licensed and some are not. But what I'm concerned about is how many actually do have licenses, because my manager has asked me, okay, how are we for licenses out there on P6? Do we have enough? Do we need to add some, or are we okay? So what I want to do is I just want to concentrate on those users that actually do have licenses. So I can, again, use my filter. I'm going to do an equals this time and say that I want to just only see those users that actually have a license assigned to them in my database. So when I apply that, I've got a return of all of those users. Now, this might be something that I'm going to run on a regular basis. One great thing here is that I can actually save the parameters of this report in P6-Auditor. So I can go down and I have this little button down here that says layouts. I can click that and I can actually save this layout so that I don't have to reapply that filter every time I come in. Maybe there's some other things. Maybe I want to move around my columns or something. I can save that. So the way I can save that, and you can see I've already got a couple that are saved out here, but I'm going to save this as a new one. So I'm going to tell it to save as, and I'm going to put a licensed user report here so that I can go back and I can use this. I could put some notes on about this particular layout if I would like, and then I can apply it, which is going to save it. Now, not only do I get this saved successfully at the bottom, but now I can see that I'm actually using a pre-saved layout that called that user license report. So now every time I go in and I want to analyze just the users that have licenses, I can apply this and be ready to go. Now, I said my manager wanted to look at this. So how am I going to get this to my manager? Well, I do have the option of exporting this as an Excel file. So if I click this export, it's going to actually go out and it's going to open this particular report in Excel. So then I have the ability to save this and share it with whomever might be interested in this user count. I could use the functionality in Excel to do, to number this, to keep to know how many I have, etc. So you do have that ability on each one of these reports to export it out to Excel so that you can manipulate it and share it and do things other than what you are able to in the auditor tool itself. So the last thing I want to visit is the login history. Let's say, for instance, you're analyzing your user usage and you have users that you know have access out there, but they are not necessarily using Primavera all the time. I can go into this user login history. Now I can see I've only got the zeros here. So I have several users that are not using it at all. They haven't used it in the last 30 days. So what I can do is, instead of filtering or anything like that, I can actually sort on this. So I can click it once for ascending order and then click it again for descending. Now I can see that I've got some usage here. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger so that I can take a look at what kind of usage each one of my users has had in the last 30 days. And some of these ones that haven't logged in, maybe I want to check with them and let them know, do you really need this? Can I free up that license that you're consuming here, instead of, not using it, and could I take that license and have somebody else use it? So a lot of great user information to help you manage your users in your Primavera P6 database there. So with that, before I actually hand it back to Nicole, are there any questions related to what I showed you?
Yeah, maybe you have some specific things that you know you bumped into on some events or whatnot. If you do, go ahead and throw them in the questions and we can try and address them. Maybe, Sue, if you go back to the events just for a sec and we can just
Sure.
look at some of the other headlines. We don't necessarily have to run through an example, just so that people can get an idea, because there's quite a few.
Right.
And I think probably for me, the most common ones was the project. I know I used it just the other day at one of my clients because I overwrote the project ID by mistake. And I didn't notice before I could say escape. And I had no idea what the heck the project was called, right? So in that case, I jumped in the auditor. I checked what the name was and what I changed it to so I could change it back. I know I use that a lot. So there's an example. EPS, you already went through the moving EPS. I deal with that
Right.
really often.
Um,
Go ahead.
So for resources, if you happen to have, maybe a resource that was deleted and now things aren't looking quite right and things like that, you could go out and take a look. Maybe a resource was renamed, and you want to find out what it was renamed to. Maybe it needs to be changed back.
Yeah.
Same with calendars. Calendars, and this is going to actually, tell you what all changed on it. So, I have a calendar type. Maybe I took a project calendar and I rolled it up to the global level. It's going to tell me this in this calendar type, that, hey, this is what happened to this calendar. So just, I mean, there's all kinds of items that can be looked at and filtered on each one of these audit tables.
Yeah. Yeah. And as you pointed out, you can make layouts if there's things that you do often, like the project looking for a rename or an edit on the project. That's one that you might
Yes.
do often. So, okay. Okay, well, I think the tool is pretty simple to use. It's very much geared to those admin super users when they're being asked, what happened to my project or somebody changed something. This is really the tool that we use when we're administering people's databases. And so, that's where it started for larger clients that we have 5, 6, 7 databases we're dealing with. And then it kind of grew from there because more and more clients or people were reaching out about whether we had a tool like this. So, okay. Okay, I think that's good, Sue. No immediate questions are popping up, so.
All right. So, well, I guess you can take it back, I guess.
I guess. Let me do that.
All right.
Okay. Okay, great. So let's go ahead and I'll just wrap up. So the tool's has a very focused target as to what it's doing. It's just one of our many tools for P6. And some of the benefits and ROI that we've mentioned is really the ability to react quickly to those oops moments and those struggling to find something. Okay, so this is really the key. Is when your team knows that you've got this tool, they can get to you and say, I deleted something. And that can be hugely important. If you don't do your own backups nightly, which you can do, by the way, in job services, you can take backups every night. You might have to get your IT team to do a rollback or a restore. So the faster you can figure that out, the better. And really, the time to react is huge. Now, obviously, there could be coaching moments here too, which are really important, right? Or you might realize that maybe your security is not quite where you think it should be. So I had this a few weeks ago with a client who was surprised that someone was able to delete something and they realized they hadn't given the right profile. Okay, so this is another thing that can help you figure out if there's some gaps or holes in your security. Now, P6 unfortunately doesn't always give the complete flexibility in the way that you do the profiles to secure everything. It's just not possible. So, you gotta find the sweet spot there. So it's easy to use, as you saw. What she showed you is pretty much how we work with it, and a newer feature in this version. So we've overhauled the GUI on this version, and we've improved the ability to save layouts and the easy use of filtering and the grouping, sorting that you saw. So you don't need a lot of coaching. It's pretty easy to use, and it's relatively well, it's also relatively inexpensive. It's a pretty inexpensive tool in terms of what you can get and save from it. Especially sweet spot is with our larger clients with lots of databases and lots of users. Now, the other thing could be if you've got a lot of new users and you want to help with those coaching moments. Okay, so you can have some standard layouts each day to go look at whether people did any deletes, whether they've done some edits. You can be monitoring that global data proactively, and that's a huge win. And I think really saving frustration. That's one of the big things that I've seen is with the clients that have the auditor, they know that the auditor's turned on, they can go look at it right away. And they said that it helps the communication between the users when something's gone wrong. Okay, instead of sometimes you get in these moments where no one wants to admit that maybe they made a mistake. It does happen. And as Sue mentioned, it's human nature to be a little bit shy about admitting that. So this kind of helps get rid of that because people know the auditor's there. So they're a bit more proactive in letting you know that they've made a mistake and getting the right people involved to fix it. So it's a strange benefit, but it is a very valuable benefit in the end. Okay. Okay, great. So I don't see any questions jumping up, but certainly if you do have any, just go ahead and throw them in and we will try and address them prior to closing off today. So this is one of many tools that Emerald has built over the years to provide a better user experience, not only with P6, we have other tools for Unifier, we have lots for contract management, we have others for risk and so on. So really the key thing is we're taking advantage of our programming team that we've had from the very beginning of Emerald and using that to help get more and more tools to make your life better in P6. So that's really the objective of these tools. And this one is, it's got a very niche use, but it's very, very handy to have that ability to see what's going on in P6 tool. So I'm going to move over. If you have any questions, go ahead and throw them at us. If not, that's okay. It's a pretty simple tool. Actually, I'm not sure if I've got the right names on here. Yes. If you think of something that you want to discuss afterwards, you can certainly reach out to us. And prior to us closing out, I'm just going to throw that up. If you do want to have us reach out, you want to know more about pricing, the phone call or whatnot, feel free to click on one of these choices, just so we know if you do want us to communicate or not, and do a follow-up. Okay, so you can go ahead and click on that. That just helps us know. Okay, excellent. So I think that's all. We'll stay on for another few minutes if people do have something they want to ask and if they want something to be shown. Otherwise, you've got the info there. And Donna, if you want to send your email into the chat so people can reach out that way, that's Donna's likely closer to some of you, especially in the Philippines. She's our local Philippines rep. So she can certainly answer your questions and keep the conversation going on that. So hopefully you saw something of interest, and we've got other webinars coming up in the next few weeks. If you've missed the P6QA one, I think that one's coming up next week. And you can go to our website to see when other webinars are coming from Loader, Scrubber, our Scrubber tool, which is fantastic to help you deal with XERs, again, keeping your database clean. So just reach out, see what other tools we might have in our toolkit to help make your life better. All right, thanks for attending.
Thank you very much for attending.